Hello there, welcome back to the Steel City Sports Podcast, and today we're going to be continuing our first round coverage of the NBA playoffs. So yesterday we did a couple videos. I did my NBA awards, and we also did coverage of the Nets versus Sixers series. So if you're interested in those videos, please go check those out. Today we're going to be covering the Warriors versus the Kings. Obviously, this is the 3-6 matchup in the Western Conference, and we're going to break down the starting lineups, the bench, the coach, and take a look at the past 10 games and their records, all the fun stuff today. And I think this is a particularly interesting matchup because I think the Kings, they are probably the least experienced team in terms of playoff experience. You know, I would think like their most experienced playoff player would be Harrison Barnes, I guess, and he hasn't been in the playoffs in a couple of years. You know, he's been with the Kings for a while. Obviously, they haven't been in the playoffs since 2006, whereas Golden State is probably the most experienced playoff team. They obviously won the finals last year. They've been in the playoffs however many years. The past 10 years, I think they only missed the playoffs one time, and that was 2020 when Clay and Steph were hurt and KD had just left. So very interesting. You know, people always talk about the impact of experience. I think this series is really going to showcase the importance of playoff experience. So let's take a look at the lineups. We have at the point guard position, De'Aaron Fox versus Steph Curry. As great of a year as De'Aaron Fox has had, and I do think he deserves to make an All-NBA team this year for how good he's been. First-time All-Star this year. And also, if you saw my awards video, I awarded him the Clutch Player of the Year. So I think very highly of De'Aaron Fox. However, at the end of the day, it's Steph Curry. I still think he's the best point guard in the NBA. So he obviously wins that matchup there. And one thing that I think is underrated about Steph Curry's game is his defense, because people don't really think of Steph Curry as a good defender. But if you go back and watch, particularly in the finals last year, Steph Curry has really come a long way in his defensive ability, and I think he offers a lot more on that side of the ball than De'Aaron does. Not that that's a major thing of Steph's game. Obviously, the offense is the bread and butter, but just wanted to note that for Steph. Next, we have at the shooting guard position, Kevin Huerter versus Klay Thompson, two really good three-point shooters, but Klay obviously gets the win here. Klay is having one of the best years of his career. He's really back to Klay Thompson. I think this is the first time he's averaged over 20 points per game since the 2017 season. So good for Klay. He's finally finding his footing back in the NBA. You know, he was a little rusty last year, which was expected. You know, he had missed 2 full seasons. Now he's, I think, fully back to the Klay that we all know and love. And as good as Kevin Huerter's been, I just think Klay does everything at a higher level and is clearly the better defender. So he gets the check mark there. Next is Harrison Barnes versus Andrew Wiggins. Again, these are similar players. I'm taking Andrew Wiggins. He was the second best player on the team when they won the finals last year. And he was so good even that he had some people giving him some love for Finals MVP. Obviously, he didn't really stand a chance after Steph's Game 3 performance, but there was some chatter after Game 1 about maybe Wiggins could win the Finals MVP. He was that good in the Finals, and people, I think, really forget that because he's a big reason as to why the Warriors, I think, weren't as good this year. You know, he missed basically half the season with personal issues, and, I think him coming back, even though it's been a while since he's been in the lineup, I think he's going to have a massive impact on this series because he just opens up the game a lot more for the Warriors. I know we talk about the defense, but particularly on the offensive side of the ball, because if you take Wiggins out of the lineup, they don't really have any interior scoring at all, really. It's really just Steph and Klay. The guards are deep, obviously Jordan Poole. And so adding Wiggins just adds a whole new dynamic to this team that I think really gets overlooked whenever people talk about this team. Power forward position, Keegan Murray versus Draymond Green. I really like Keegan Murray. I've always been a big fan of his. Back whenever the draft was going down, I was really much so in favor of them taking him over Jaden Ivey, and I think it's really worked out there. Great fit with Sacramento. He's been a phenomenal rookie, but however, Draymond Green, I've seen some people saying Draymond Green could even be in the runnings for Defensive Player of the Year this year. I don't agree with that just because the Warriors' defense as a whole is actually really bad. So even if you're individually great as a defender, I just can't in good conscience give you DPOY if your team is a bad defense. And the Warriors have a pretty bad defense this year. Again, I think a large part of that is Wiggins missing half the year, but Draymond, I think, still gets the nod here over Keegan just for his IQ, his defensive ability, his basically can guard any player. And then center, the Kings finally get a win here with Domantas Sabonis versus Kevon Looney. Sabonis is clearly the better player. He was an all-star this year, and he will probably make an all-NBA team as well, alongside Fox. And he's just been incredible, and really, I think, further proving that trade with Indiana for Tyrese, it is, at this point in time, you can say it's pretty evenly fair, because I was someone who actually defended the trade for the Kings' perspective, because a lot of people were saying that the Kings got fleeced, but I actually was saying that trade wasn't so bad for them because it could be really good in the short term, and it's done just that. I mean, they're the 3 seed. Him and Fox are one of the best duos in the NBA, so he gets as much as I love Looney, I do like Looney a lot. I think he's an underrated piece of the Warriors, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. I've seen Kevon Looney guards and do good at it, particularly I look back at the Western Conference Finals last year against Dallas. Kevon Looney would get switched on to Luka, and it's not like he was clamping Luka, but he would hold his own against Luka, slow him down, getting stops on the perimeter. So I really think he's an unsung hero of the Warriors, just because, there's obviously Steph and Clay and Dre, but Looney is a integral piece to this team. So I like him, but still Sabonis is better. Next we have the benches. So for Sacramento, they have Davion Mitchell, Malik Monk, Kessler Edwards, Trey Lyles, and Alex Len for their bench. The Warriors bench, Jordan Poole, Gary Payton II, Anthony Lamb, Jonathan Kuminga, and JaMychal Green. I'm going to go with the Warriors bench here. It's been shaky this year. Obviously, Gary Payton is just back from his injuries, and he's had an immediate effect on the Warriors. I think, again, another thing people are kind of overlooking with the Warriors is the fact that Gary Payton is back. And he was crucial for them winning that title last year because of his defensive ability, especially with Clay last year not really being his full self. Gary Payton was able to shoulder a lot of that perimeter defensive load on the team's top guard. So having him back is crucial. Jordan Poole, obviously, we know is a flamethrower, can get hot at any moment. And I like what I've seen from Kuminga. It looks like he's finally starting to come into that potential that I and so many others saw in him. I really, really thought highly of him. He kind of had a rough start to this year, but towards the end here, he's really starting to find himself a role, carve himself some minutes on the team. Kind of sucks for him, though, because, with playoffs, minutes shrink, obviously, and Kuminga is probably not going to get many minutes in the playoffs. But I do like this. I do have to give Malik Monk a lot of credit. He's been incredible with the Kings. So I do like him there, but overall, I just like the Warriors bench better. Comparing the coaches, obviously this is a little ironic because Mike Brown was the Warriors assistant coach for years, and he basically learned under Steve Kerr a lot of stuff. And so it's interesting that this is the matchup. The fact that Mike Brown is now facing his former team in the playoffs, because I'm thinking he brought some of the Warriors playbook over to Sacramento, and that helped them out a little in terms of how good they've been. So interesting that is the matchup. I'm going to give the nod to Steve Kerr. As much as I've liked Mike Brown this year, and I gave him Coach of the Year. If you go watch my awards video, I expand on that a little more. I love Mike Brown, and I was actually really sad when he left the Warriors because, I do like the Warriors a lot. And but Steve Kerr obviously is a 4-time champion as a head coach. I mean, it's kind of hard to pick against him. There's very few people, if any, that I would say have a advantage when it comes to coaching. And then let's look at their records. The Kings only won 4 more games than the Warriors, and the Warriors, you got to think, had the worst away record of any of the playoff teams by far. There's only 2 teams in the NBA that had a worse road record than the Warriors, and that's the Spurs and the Rockets, who both combined, I don't even think, have like 44 wins. So I think that's kind of impressive for the Warriors. The fact that they only lost 4 more games than the Kings, but they were so bad on the road, just shows how dominant they are at home. So, yeah, I mean, they're going to have to, in order to win this series, they're obviously going to have to win a game in Sacramento. I think it's doable. Looking at their last 10, Sacramento is 500 to Golden State's 8-2. So what does all this mean? Obviously, I'm leading up to, I think if you follow what I'm getting at here, I think you can guess who I'm picking to win this. It is the Golden State Warriors. And I hate to do this to the Kings because I really like the Kings. I've loved the year they've had. They're a really fun team to watch. However, I just think all the stuff we talked about, I think their starting lineup is clearly better than Sacramento's. I think that the chemistry and the playoff experience is all really just going to come together, and I'm predicting the Golden State Warriors to win this series in 6 games. And, it's been a great year for Sacramento. I hate to see them lose in the first round, but you're going up against Golden State, the dynasty, so it's just kind of how it goes. So that is it for today's video. I might post later on today. We can do coverage of the 4-5 matchup in the East, which is Cleveland and New York. So stay tuned for that video. Please let me know down below what you think, and your predictions obviously are very much so welcomed. And if you made it this far, please leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.